Once, I was asked a question. What is your story of success? And sad enough, I said that I don't have a true story of success yet. Being an English teacher, I saw my students growing, achieving their language goals, getting promoted. And I felt that nothing was changing in my life. I felt that I was stuck in the routine. So I started to question myself, what is success? For some people, success is about money and publicity. For others, it's having a family or speaking English with native speakers. Career, professional growth, starting a business. Goals may be different. But through teaching the English language, I found a similarity between striving for professional success and the process of language learning. So, just because I'm a language teacher, let me explain how it works in the process of language learning. In the beginning, many students see their teacher as their role model, as their mentor, as the embodiment of their dream. Just imagine yourself starting to learn a new language for the first time consciously, and you see a teacher already speaking it fluently, and you want to get as close as possible to the same level of the language. If only we could imagine the top of the mountain as the biggest goal. And we would always see a person already standing there. And for me as a teacher, it's a great pleasure to see my students climbing this mountain. With great appreciation, I hear from them saying, I can't believe but I got A2 for the English level test. I can't believe but I watched the Barbie movie and I understood everything. I can't believe, but I was in Dubai and I could make small talks with people around me. And first, the small successes give them pleasure and motivation to keep going. But after a few weeks, months, or a year, it actually depends on the type of personality. Every student faces the so-called plateau. When they realize that they do not progress much. Actually, you may be wondering, what I mean by the plateau. And as a teacher, I can clearly distinguish the stage when I see my students doing their homework on the go or just skipping their homework, being late for the class or skipping the class. And my students tend to say that they have been doing every single home task every evening. They have been learning every single word. But then they realized that the result that they got was not what they just expected. What if I ask you to imagine what the language learning process looks like on the graph? Would you imagine it as a gradual process? What if I tell you that the way how we perceive and the way how we progress in reality differs a lot? Well, actually, the plateau effect was first described by Bandura, a Stanford professor in the 20th century, and he has traced the dependence between the time, the level of the competence, and the way what we expect while learning a language. Let me show you this. In the beginning, when you just learn a few words of the new language for you, you may feel the boost of knowledge. You may feel that you can already speak this language a little bit. But in fact, it's just half of the percent of the whole language. Then, after a couple of introductory grammar rules, introductory words, you may get the feeling that everything is getting more and more complicated. And you have a feeling that you are here and there is so much to learn. But that's actually the start of learning the language and speaking it. Then comes the practice. Having the first small talk in the supermarket or pharmacy, and you understand that everything is clear to you. And you feel that you are a superhero. You know English very well. But when it comes to having a more complicated conversation or watching the whole movie in original, you may have the feeling that you're still there and there is so much to learn. And that's actually the way where the plateau effect starts. When my students say that they would reach B1 level and understand everything perfectly well, what the native speaker says and what is said in the movie, but it's not really close to the reality. And they start to devalue all the results that were achieved by that day, saying that learning an English language was just a waste of time. But what Albert Bandura says is that it's okay to have ups and downs, regressions, and the plateau. But the most important thing is that after the plateau comes the growth. And it's really similar to what the professional growth looks like, right? Have you ever had the feeling that you have been working so hard on the position you really wanted to get, but the progress was so slow and you had the feeling that you got stuck? Have you ever had the feeling that you were in two minds about your career, whether to continue working on it little by little or just change it dramatically, change your job or occupation? And going back full circle to what I said in the beginning about my story of success, I've also reached the so-called plateau. When I realized that I've devalued all the results that were achieved by that day. But looking back, a few years ago, working online from any point of the world, traveling a few times a year and speaking English fluently with native speakers was only in my dreams. And that's what I called success a few years ago. And that's what I don't call now. So I started to question myself, how can we turn this anxiety for striving for professional success into the joy? And actually, I've discovered that there is a way how to help my students and me to stop beating ourselves up if we still haven't reached this illusory success. And the first thing we need to do is to be curious. As simple as that. Let me take you back to the summer 2023 to illustrate this point, when the majority of my students went on their vacations. But as a freelance teacher, I was left without work and the income I was counting on. So I was sitting in front of the computer, staring at it, until I came across one picture. What can you see here? Can you see a dot, black dot on the white? Yes, you do. But can you see the white space with just a small black dot on it? I'm sure you can right now. And that picture completely shifted my perspective. I thought, what if I just don't concentrate on this negative point in my life, like this negative point in this picture? What if I take this time that I had and devote it to something that I've always wanted to take up, but I was putting it off, saying that, oh, I don't have time for that. And that was the right time. And I devoted some of my free time to dancing because I thought, why so many people are crazy about dancing? And I couldn't believe, but I fell in love with Latin American dances. And later, it became my motivation to start learning Spanish. I also devoted some of my free time to becoming a student myself. And I took up a course of academic advanced English, which later gave me the opportunity to take some students to teach them advanced English. So if you're stuck in your routine and you feel that you don't progress much, just try to take something up that you've always wanted to take up. Maybe just the opportunities to revive your career are hiding somewhere there. The next important thing is to appreciate every little step you take while you're climbing this mountain. And let me take it back again to the same example when I devoted some of my free time to attendance new for me events, like this public talk conference in July in Moscow, which highly inspired me And later, I decided to take up a course of public speaking, which resulted in me right now speaking internationally on the stage in Dubai. But I need to be honest with you. Speaking on the stage was my fear.
Can do it. Maybe
And first, when I just took a few classes, I was so nervous. I was nervous and anxious. I had this idea in my mind that there is some top of the mountain. Didn't know whether I performed well on the stage or not. But later, I decided to shift my focus. And I concentrated on my everyday small steps. I thought, okay, if it's not, sorry. I thought, if it's not a success today, it will be a success in the future. Because I'm taking the small steps. And by doing these two simple steps, being curious and taking the small steps, you may get the joy instead of anxiety. And right now, I'm feeling the joy, not anxiety. And without being curious, passionate, and consistent in my everyday little steps, wouldn't resulted in me standing right now here, being myself, like I am right now. Because without being curious in my childhood, in the English language, wouldn't resulted in me becoming a teacher. Without being curious of the public talk conference in July, would it ended up with me being here right now? And without being just curious of the Chinese language 6 years ago, would it resulted in me going to China and living there for more than 8 months, becoming an interpreter for Shanghai designers and at the Fashion Week show. And I couldn't imagine something like this without being curious and consistent in my everyday little steps. And for some people, my story will seem maybe not big enough, but I realized that this is my story of success. And from now on, I don't want to devalue any small success. Career, professional growth, starting a business. Goals may be different, but there is a clear similarity in the process of learning languages and the professional growth. And if you are stuck, just try to find something that you're passionate about, that drives you. And that's the exact feeling that you get will keep you going and growing. And keep in mind that every little step matters. Thank you.